Hey look, it's Freddy Fazbear. Ho, 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 ho.
Okay, the joke's old. I get it. I get it.
Well folks, Scott finally did it. What started as just a simple little indie game released all the way back in 2014 has finally gotten its first actual cinematic release. And though many could argue it's not perfect, the undeniable fact is that this movie was made with tons of care and passion, which is more than you can say for a lot of other adaptations. It's thanks to Scott and the wonderful crew that helped him that the dreaded video game movie curse continues to stay broken. And today, I thought I'd do my own quick review on this incredible cinematic experience. Hey everyone, Matt here, and my apologies for these strange new visuals. I'm trying something new since I hear Universal is really going after YouTubers who use their movie footage, which probably wouldn't be an issue if they didn't release it on digital so soon, but hey, what do I know? So yeah, I thought I'd play it safe and use those clips sparingly. Anyways, for this brief review video, I thought I'd start by going over 5 things that I really liked about the FNaF movie, followed by 5 things that weren't bad per se, but more so missing from the movie. Oh, and I'd say spoilers, but come on, who hasn't seen this movie yet? So without further ado, let's get into the list. I thought I'd start with a big one, that being the fact that this studio completely nailed the animatronics in this movie. Like many fans have speculated for years, there was ample opportunity for the studio to completely change the way these guys look, to be more gritty or realistic. But nope. They made the right decision to be 100% faithful to their game designs, and boy did they translate well to the big screen. And wouldn't you know it, we have none other than the Jim Henson Creature Company to thank for these amazing designs. I can't imagine how many hours were put into creating these monstrosities, but it was totally worth it. Next, I thought I'd get into a scene that's been discussed and debated by fans quite a lot ever since this movie's release. The fort building scene. Some fans thought it was way too wacky and out of place for a FNaF film, while others thought this was actually a nice touch given the backgrounds of the animatronics. And I personally agree with the latter. With so many sequels in the video game franchise, the concept of evil animatronics has shifted several times. Sometimes it's faulty AIs, hallucinations, or nightmares, and other times it's whatever security breach was doing. With all these changes in direction, it's easy to forget where the animatronics started in the first game, as simple children. Children that are long gone whose souls are barely holding on to these machines. And though the first game has focused on the dark side of that plenty, we've never gotten an opportunity to see if the children had a good, gentle side. And that's why I think the fort building scene really works. I can understand if people still think it's out of place and somewhat weird, but when you consider the context, I think it's kinda neat. A very common mistake made by many horror movie writers is thinking that you don't have to make the main characters interesting, since everyone is only here to see the scary monster/ghost. Thankfully, that is not a mistake this movie makes. Even in the very start of the film, our protagonist Mike Schmidt is immediately made interesting with him barely saying a word. Through some very well-crafted show-don't-tell exposition, we're given hints of his tragic backstory that aren't overly obvious, but not too vague either. An example of this would be this one scene where he misunderstands this father looking for his kid and just goes completely nuts on him. It's sudden, but you slowly start to put the pieces together, all with barely a word coming from Mike. The actor Josh Hutcherson did such a good job with this role. Mike's sister Abby is also a really interesting character, one who instantly connects with the animatronics, giving us the aforementioned fort building scene. And then there's Vanessa, probably my favorite addition to the cast. This 2-hour movie did her character more justice than 80 gigabytes of security breach. A seemingly friendly cop with ulterior motives, and making her the daughter of Afton was such a clever touch, and her involvement in the secret plot kinda makes the absence of the police more convincing when it comes to the shady happenings at the pizzeria, like she's some sort of double agent deterring them away. It brings some believability to how Afton keeps getting away with all these evil doings. And on the subject of Afton, ladies and gentlemen, I consider myself a movie villain connoisseur. I've always believed they're the most important part of a story, and therefore I tend to be a little critical on them sometimes. And I will tell you right now, William Afton has earned my movie villain seal of approval. I know everyone has already sung Matthew Lillard's praises by now, but I'm going to do the same, because he deserves it. William Afton was phenomenally introduced in this movie. The biggest baddie in the FNaF franchise come to life at last. Even when he's posing as the career counselor, you can kind of tell something's off about him. I mean, okay, maybe everyone already knew he was cast as Afton, and the fake name wasn't fooling anyone, but still. Anyway, they did a great job making this guy intimidating. The size of the suit, the soul-piercing eyes, the creepy voice modulator, not to mention almost every line he has is instantly iconic. And this is all before he gets spring-locked. I am not sure how they're going to handle actual Springtrap while still keeping the sequel PG-13, because that gets gruesome pretty quick. So yeah, Afton was awesome. And from what I've seen, that's pretty much unanimous among everyone who's seen the movie. Can't wait for his inevitable return.
The lore, guys! The lore! The lore! Bring the lore along!
Last good point I'll go over, and it's a big one. As someone who looks to the first game as the best one in the entire franchise, I loved how focused on that game this movie was. Outside of including Springtrap, Vanessa, and that stupid Balloon Boy cameo, pretty much everything was adapted from the first game and the first game alone. Hardly any references to the Fredbear Diner or the sister location or anything like that, and I appreciated it. They really wanted to capture the essence of the first game, and I think they accomplished it very well, from the animatronics and their backstory to the atmosphere itself. And now it's time to get into what was missing in the FNaF movie. Now again, for me personally, these things don't necessarily take away from the experience. This was still a great movie, but these are just things that arguably would have made it even better. So, let's start by getting the obvious out of the way. Yeah, you better believe I'm going there. As many have pointed out, this movie was sorely missing the presence of its king of Five Nights at Freddy's, the Let's Player YouTuber who was the lightning rod for this franchise in the first place. And for those of you who don't know, this cameo was in fact planned for the movie. He was going to be the security guard in the very beginning, but Mark was unable to film the part due to scheduling conflicts involving, believe it or not, a movie that he himself is currently making. Yep, apparently he's working on a movie called Iron Lung, based on an indie game of the same name. The trailer he released for it had millions of people all around the world unanimously declare, "Oh yeah, Mark did play that game." Okay, I mean, it is cool that Mark went out of his way to help this indie developer get his game turned into a movie. And I guess I can't really think of any other indie games he's played that deserve the movie treatment more. I mean, besides... Okay, I'll knock it off. I guess I'm just a little bummed out that we missed the golden opportunity to have the big four involved in this momentous occasion. Mark, Matt, Pat, Scott, and Corey. Oh well. We may not have gotten Mark this time, but even Scott Cawthon himself says he really hopes Mark is available for the sequel. He certainly speaks for the rest of us. But for the time being, I'll just let Mark sum this up.
Wasted opportunity!
On the subject of cameos, here's another thing that was dearly missed. How cool would it have been if Scott himself cameoed as the phone guy? Now some of you could argue that Shaggy himself technically took this role, which... fair, I suppose. But compared to Markiplier's more involved cameo, this would have been way easier to fit into the movie. Scott could literally phone it in and nobody would complain. I mean, just imagine Mike sitting in the office to doze off and he hears...
Hello? Hello?
I assure you, the audience reaction would rival Andrew Garfield in No Way Home. Maybe Scott wasn't feeling a cameo, or maybe he didn't have time. Who knows? He certainly put in more than enough work bouncing from studio to studio just trying to find halfway decent people to handle this project. Maybe just like Mark, he'll be saving it for the second movie. Okay, I'm just gonna cut to the chase with this one. The eyes. Okay, look, I swear I'm not one of those fans that constantly complained about the animatronic eyes. I actually think they looked okay, even in the first trailer. But at the same time, I do kinda understand where these fans are coming from. Here's the thing, glowing red and yellow eyes come off as more of a technological malfunctioning thing, which works in the context of, say, FNaF 2, which dealt with malfunctioning AI. But the first game was more about possessed machines. When I think of the OG possessed animatronics, I think more along these lines. Eerie and frightening, downright paranormal looking. Something that makes you go, okay, these robots are not right. I mean, these black and white eyes are downright iconic in the series, so I have to say it is a bit of a shame that they weren't in the movie. And speaking of animatronics missing iconic stuff, the scream. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. The blood-curdling jump scare sound effect that sounds neither human nor robotic. I think it's a bit of a shame we didn't get it at least once in the movie. I mean, unless you count when it plays during the Living Tombstone song in the end credits. Which, quick side note, awesome song choice. But yeah, those are pretty much the only things I thought were missing. Aside from those small nitpicks, I've made it clear earlier how impressed I am by the animatronics in this movie. This is a super minor nitpick, but I am a little sad we didn't get a power outage scene reminiscent of what could happen in the first game. Can you imagine having the power go out in the movie, and as soon as Mike goes to look for the breaker, he hears this? In fact, having a whole chase segment with the power out would be super intense. The concept itself has been way too absent from the franchise lately, and having it in the movie would have been a great reminder on how tense that made the first game. Again, it might just be a nitpick to a lot of people, but it's an important one in my opinion. Not movie ruining, but significant enough to mention. And the last missing thing is... nothing. I tricked ya. There is no fifth nitpick. Instead, I wanted to take a minute to reflect on how far Scott Cawthon has come. I mean, it just blows my mind the more I think about it. Just imagine yourself in his shoes. You're a small-time animator and game creator who's just barely making a name for yourself, one whose work is constantly criticized and never looked in a positive light. The few times people do pay attention to you, they only point out the flaws and the problems and the stuff that you worked so hard on. That always hit me because I can sort of relate to that on some level. Then you take a gamble by doing something you've never done before, creating a horror game. Cut to present day, you're sitting in a movie theater. That silly little project you made back in 2014 is on the big screen. It's an actual well-crafted cinematic release that people are enjoying. And not only that, but that little game you made has paved the way for sequels, spin-offs, books, merch, theory videos, fan songs, fan art, fan games, and most importantly, an awesome and caring community of people. I don't know about you guys, but if I was Scott sitting in that movie theater thinking about all that, I'd probably start crying. Yeah, I don't care what you think, I would legitimately start crying. It's just mind-boggling how far this man has come, and I couldn't be happier for him. He may be retired now, but will always appreciate the love and passion he put into this franchise. The future without Scott may be uncertain, but here's hoping his successor carries on with the same passion for years to come. Thank you, Scott, and we'll see you on the flip side.